Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. My name is Kevin, Kevin in all caps, youtube.com/@Kevin247. And I hope that each and every one of you are having an amazing day. I honestly feel flattered, honored to be asked questions and being allowed by you all to share my thoughts, my opinions, provide you information as I do research to seek solutions and answers and better preparing for whatever it is that we may be preparing for. I myself, personally, my family, we are preparing to move. Now, granted, my scenery and setting today is a little different than normal as I am in Atlanta for the next few hours, and then we will be heading back to Florida, for which we have moved to Florida last year. With that being said, I think that we have pretty much made the determination that we are ready to move again, and that is out of an apartment and into a house, which ultimately means that we will be buying a home, which ties into the questions that I've been receiving here more often than not. Emails coming through, DMs and direct messages on Instagram, Patreon members asking the same. Kevin, can you give me your opinion? Can you give me an update on the housing market? What's happening with mortgage rates? What's happening with the Fed? What's happening with eminent domain? Should I buy? Should I rent? Can we buy? Interestingly enough, an idea or another question maybe was proposed, and that being, if the World Economic Forum, the WEF or the WEF, gets their way and we own nothing, then I assume that auto financing will be phased out and we will be allowed to lease only. So doesn't that mean that if you want to own your own car, that you should finance it as soon as possible, ASAP, before financing is phased out as the CBDC phases in? Now, this brings a lot of thoughts to mind as I want to address everything said here, one of which being what Dave Ramsey said about the dollar, the US dollar, the future of the US dollar, and how it relates to CBDC, as well as future central bank digital currencies, most importantly, those being created by BRICS nations. But as we start from the top, own nothing. Yeah, that is a serious threat and possibility, but when you think about it, a lot of Americans have already been in that situation for generations, for many, many decades of owning nothing. And unfortunately, the biggest problem there isn't the World Economic Forum. It isn't the WEF. It isn't the world elites, the wealthy millionaires and billionaires out there and potential trillionaires, depending on who you ask, Andrew Tate. But the problem is really just us. What we think, what we believe, what we feel as though we're capable of and are willing to try to do. The challenges, the risks that we're willing to accept and face, although some of which may not ultimately lead to the final outcome of the success that you would desire, that you would like. We shouldn't look at those instances as failures and give up, or say that we can never make it, or that they're out to get us, or I'll always be poor, I'll always be broke, I'll always own nothing. Maybe we need to accept that reality ASAP before the World Economic Forum, the WEF elites, those who are flying their private jets to Davos and eating caviar and drinking champagne, before they get their way. Now, when we talk about auto financing, I put up a video yesterday. My wife and I, Michelle, Squirrel Tribe, we went in hard on the future of auto loans and lending. I'll link it down in the description. Maybe I'll put it up here. And We can, and I'll put it at the end screen so you guys can check that video out when we're done. But ultimately, lending is becoming more difficult. Just making a note here so I don't forget to put that in there. Lending is becoming more difficult, and it's impacting auto loans. It's impacting the auto industry. It's impacting buyers, sellers, private and commercial dealers. The banks are tightening. Lending is becoming less available. The credit requirements are becoming higher, more difficult to be approved, while inflation is eating away at people's income, their money, their discretionary income. We're in a recession. Job loss is taking a toll on millions and millions more. Despite the misrepresented jobs created numbers that don't go into great detail on hours lost numbers. What good is having a job if you don't have any hours to work to earn the money to get paid? It's all tongue in cheek. You got to read between the lines. They've put so much lipstick on these pigs, it's kind of hard to see where the lipstick starts and the pig stops. But either way, will we get into a situation, in a position where we will only be able to lease vehicles and never own them? Honestly, no. In my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, take it for what it's worth. It's just me having a conversation with you all. And again, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to do that. If you enjoy these conversations, let me know. Smash that like button. I really do appreciate it. But vehicles are inherently depreciating assets, or more so liabilities. Therefore, the minute that you utilize this object, this commodity, this consumer good, it begins to lose value, diminishing value. It requires constant maintenance and repair, and is just continuously worth less and less and less the more and more you use it. Therefore, no one interested in control of money, assets, capital, resources, would want those losses. Now, in comparison, when we think about a traditional lease, it is typically for a brand new vehicle where if you were to choose to lease this vehicle from a dealership, the dealership would own that vehicle. You would lease said vehicle. You would ultimately prepay the depreciated value of said vehicle, then return it to the dealership, only for that dealership to then sell it. They don't continuously lease vehicles over and over and over again. And I don't think the World Economic Forum would be interested in any of that at all either. Now, the source of fuel that powers and operates said vehicle, gas, petrol, dinosaur juice, fossil fuels, synthetic fuel, hydrogen, electricity, wind, solar, I don't know. That's probably of greater concern to them than your ownership. They also know that your ownership or your leasing and payments being made on these vehicles further puts you at a disadvantage, economically disadvantaged. So they would actually really prefer that you do that. And they also know that if you buy a vehicle, you're going to have to continuously pay to maintain that vehicle. And eventually you may trade in that vehicle for which you'll get far less than what it's really worth, just to start the cycle and process all over again with a new car payment upwards of $700 to maybe over $1,000 a month. Get ready for that. Inversely, real estate, homes, houses, townhomes, condos, those assets historically over time continue to appreciate. Very seldom do we find instances where it's a historic trend where you buy a home and it's continuously worth less and less and less every year, every other year, 10 years down the road. If we look at home prices and home values over the last 50 years, they're up. That's where control will be most prevalent in the appreciating assets that will continuously be worth more that people have to have. Shelter is a necessity. However, when we get to that topic of discussion, should you run out and buy a home, a property, land as soon as possible, ASAP, before you can't? Maybe. We've even discussed briefly before instances of eminent domain, property taxes, homeowners insurance. Iowa cities are scrambling to understand the impacts of new property tax law, a law that could affect funding for libraries, veteran support, and other services offered by the state. Ladies and gentlemen, if you own property, if you own real estate, if you own real property, if you own a home, you own land, you own a townhouse, a condo, be prepared for the exponential increase in sticker shock with property tax assessments and bills being thrown your way annually. If you don't have your property tax payments built into your escrow payment on your mortgage, if you have a mortgage, then you're going to have to come out of pocket thousands of dollars. And if you do have it built into your mortgage, expect your mortgage payment to increase as the adjustment for the predicted future assessment increases and drives up your payments by a few $100s a month. Do not ignore the truth. And the truth being that no matter how much you've put down, no matter how long you've lived where you live, no matter how much you pay per month, no matter what your remaining principal balance may be, if you fail to pay your property taxes, you will lose your property. You will lose your home. It will be taken away from you. Very, very important. Now, this may not be so important to some, as rich millennials are spending millions of dollars in New York City to buy property. Land is a precious, finite resource. They're not making any more of it. And I can tell you this, once we start venturing into outer space and going to other planets, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to buy real estate. That's going to be the first thing you want to do. If they allow the ability to purchase land on other planets and different galaxies and different solar systems, buy it. Control it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to do the same in the metaverse. Controlling property and land is huge. Virtual real estate, virtual assets, internet website domains, you know the value there. But the rich millennials in New York are buying these $1 million homes, beautiful houses, for one simple reason. And it's not to secure their primary residence. No, it's to destroy them, knock them down to the foundation, to then build bigger mansions in this raging house war. Now, interestingly enough, this is New York City, and if you want my opinion on the housing market, I'm going to have to give it to you from my locale. I'm not a licensed real estate agent, at least not yet, and I don't track every hyper-local market. I really only focus on my own. Now, when we lived in Atlanta, I was pretty in tune with the surrounding areas. We bought and sold 3 times here. And then, with the family and friends, we would be involved. And there are certain areas, Peachtree Corners is one of them, Alpharetta, Roswell areas, Johns Creek, where we considered buying a $500,000 home just to tear it down and build a new one. Because if you want to live in a certain place and there's no land available to find what you want, you have to weigh your options. Ultimately, we chose not to do that, but with that being said, we're in a similar situation in Florida. Particularly the area that we're in. It's a small town, very, very tight. Not a lot of land, more beach, more bay, more water than anything else, more sand. So the options are very, very limited. You're either going to get a really, really old house or a really, really old condo or an apartment, which we're in now. And I think we've decided to go to a home. Single family home, probably a ranch, maybe a 2-story. Get a little yard, place for the dog to run around. But our biggest concern really is we're seeing prices actually come down. We're seeing days on market increase, which is a good sign for buyers, not so much for sellers. But interest rates are continuously going up, and homeowners insurance is always a problem, but property taxes bugs me. Property taxes bugs me because you really never know what you're going to get. Now, granted, I shared with you how a timeshare, because there's an attorney out there working to rid folks of their timeshare obligations being locked in, and they said a timeshare is one of the only things you can buy and you don't know how much you're actually going to pay for it. It's just an ongoing cost. Well, I have to add home ownership to the list in relation to property taxes because you're never going to not pay for it. You're always going to pay for it. And you never know how much it's going to be. And odds are it's just going to continuously go up because real estate continues to appreciate. Now, granted, we'll have some dips, ebb and flow here and there, but for the most part, it's continuously trending upward. If you have any facts or proof to state otherwise, I'd love to hear it. But it is what it is. What are you going to do? The home for us is far more appealing because we're typically seeing some HOA costs anywhere from $50 to $100 to maybe $300 a month. Whereas inversely, a condo, or maybe even more so a condo. I don't think we've even seen any townhomes. We're looking at $1,500, $2,000 a month in an HOA on a condo. Another cost that will never go away, ever. Some of the states are, I think we're maybe fortunate not to be on this list, but some of the states with the highest property taxes include Kansas, New York, of course, Michigan, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Ohio, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Texas, Connecticut, Vermont, New Hampshire, Illinois, and New Jersey being the highest. The average effective property tax being the highest, average home value being upwards of $470,000+. Average annual property tax paid $10,400. New Jersey earns a top spot as highest property taxes, not only in property tax rate, which is over the 2% mark, but in the actual dollars spent in property taxes. That's crazy. That is unreal. But Florida's not cheap. Florida's not cheap. And there's actually some home buyers who fled to Florida to escape high taxes and are now shocked at their massive tax bills. Now, some of these taxes, actually, I showed a woman at Publix yesterday my ID. We were buying some Prosecco, and we were trying to do bottomless mimosas. I think we did it. I think we executed on that one yesterday. And she looks at my ID. She goes, "Oh, we were born in the same month, but you live in Florida. Why?" Oh man, I said because I said the beaches. I said the beaches, the traffic is better. You know, everything's better in Florida. Oh yeah, and no state income tax. So we too were part of the home buyers who fled to Florida to escape high taxes. I mean, we didn't really go to escape high taxes. It was just it was a perk. It was a plus. It was an added benefit, incentive to go to Florida, not to mention Ron DeSantis, not to mention Disney, not to mention the beaches, not to mention the water and the weather and the palm trees and the sun and everything. But we escaped state income tax. However, us as well as many others are about to be hit with massive tax bills on their property taxes, some of which going from $1,600 annually to over $5,000 a year. Unbelievable. And again, folks, if you don't pay, they will come take it. But then if you do pay, they can still come take it. Now, granted, they'd have to go through a series of legal requirements in order to provide you and present you with offers that you either have to accept or forfeit. But eminent domain is a risk in ownership. And as renters currently in an apartment, if for some reason eminent domain was to be asserted on the property, the land for which we live, we reside, that would be their problem, not ours. I mean, granted, it would be an inconvenience, but we would just find somewhere else to live. We pack up our stuff and we go. Living in an apartment has its perks. It has its ups and downs, pros and cons. And if you saw my video the other day with the thumbnail that says 5:22 a.m., you'll understand exactly what I mean by pros and cons, okay? So should we buy a house? Should we continue renting? What is my opinion on the real estate market? You know, it's a fluid situation. And I think that is typically the case in a lot of different such scenarios. And ultimately, you just have to take the information that's made available to you, do your research, formulate your best possible scenario moving forward. Plan A, have plan B, always have a backup plan, maybe plan C. And then when you feel comfortable, you make a move and you execute. I'm always happy that I've chosen to make moves, take risks, calculated risks at that in the past to get to where I am today versus having taken no action and being excluded, isolated, left out from opportunity. And this is what I was talking about earlier in the video as far as building wealth, controlling assets, cash flow producing assets, increasing your net worth typically occurs because there's a lack of knowledge and education and the inability to take action. Have you guys ever experienced that? I know a lot of people can look back even just a few years ago and say, you know what? I'll tell you, I was one of them. I didn't take action in crypto. I didn't take action in Bitcoin during the pandemic. And I honestly, I missed out. I mean, granted, it's easy to see today on the other side how I missed out. And then I don't know if I would have necessarily cashed out at the right time to make the most money when Bitcoin was going up to 50,000. I missed it because I sat idle. I didn't make a move. I didn't take the risk, but I also didn't feel comfortable with it, and that's why I didn't do it. On the flip side, I know a lot of people who did, and they have lost a lot of money, or their money got tied up on an exchange, locked up, and they can't get it out. Life savings, retirement savings, just totally gone. They'll probably never see it again. That was one instance. Same time, real estate during the pandemic was just crazy. Home values going up, over asking, cash offers being thrown at your face, crazy low interest rates. We got in at a great time and we got out at an even better time. And now we're looking to do it again. But It's a little bit different strategy, a little bit different plan. Different state, different city, different town, different lifestyle. And we like to travel. If summer hits, we're probably going to be gone all summer. But we would need someone to maintain the home. We don't want anything to go wrong. We don't want any issues, and then we come back and we got 2.5 months worth of problems sitting there that we didn't know about. It is a fluid situation, like I said. And we're going to continue to monitor. We're going to continue to do our research, do our homework, talk to people, real estate agents, mortgage brokers, those in the business, in the industry, and ultimately sit down together as a family and decide what's best for us. If what's best for us ends up being renting again in another apartment, our same apartment, maybe even renting a home, then so be it. That may be what's best. I will, for one, say that buying and renting, they both have their pros and they both have their cons. But I can tell you right now, I would much rather miss out on 2, maybe 3 years of rent payments than jump in both feet into the deep end of a housing market that could potentially see a drastic decline at the highest interest rates possible. Think about it. If we were to buy a home today, tomorrow, next week, maybe next month, because you got time to get closed, and we get the highest interest rate and the highest price, although we feel as though it's a fair, good price for the time. If the market tanks and the home values drop 10, 20%, now we have negative equity. Now we're upside down. Now we owe more than the home is technically worth, according to appraised values and surrounding comps, our zip code, other sales, other value appraisal estimates. You got to go by the appraised estimates. Never go by the Zestimate. The Zillow's estimate is wildly inaccurate. But if that were to happen, and we were to see a black swan event and the Fed deciding to drop interest rates to tame and to boost the economy, avoid a crash, avoid a meltdown, a collapse, then odds are we're going to see mortgage rates drop. Okay, well then, what are we going to do? We're going to want to refinance, obviously, to get the lowest rate. And therein lies the problem. The biggest problem overall. It costs money to refinance, thousands of dollars in attorney fees and closing costs. But the other problem is our home value has dropped 10 to 20%. So at $500,000, at $500,000, we're looking at 50 to 100 grand that we would have to come out of pocket to pay to refinance the home at the lower interest rate, because the bank's not going to allow us to refinance the negative equity, the negative balance. So what do? Do you fork over $100K, maybe more? If we bought a $1 million home, now we're forking over $100,000 to $200,000. Are you going to fork over hundreds of thousands of dollars to refinance your home that's worth now less than what you originally bought it for? Are you going to subsidize your equity yourself? I would prefer not to. I prefer to have my assets work for me instead of the other way around. And I prefer to manage and maintain my cash and my resources to put them out in the world to make more money. I want to spend as little as possible to make as much as possible. And the best and easiest way to do that is by leveraging debt and credit and having cash flow producing assets and businesses that are profitable and successful. But what do you guys